I know you're out there. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
The Krissane Hall Show.
Any varmint that crosses that lady's path has met its match. Come on!
Rise and shine, liberty-loving patriots. Welcome to the Krissane Hall Show. This is Krissane Hall. This is not a talk show. This is a teach show where we put liberty first all the time. Liberty over security. Principle over party. Truth over your favorite personality. Those are the only ways that you will ever preserve liberty. We will ever restore this republic. We've got to get over our cult of personality worship. We've got to understand that these people are supposed to be representing us, and in that, they work for us. And not forgetting that they take an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Support and defend. That's what we hire them to do. How many of them do that? And why do we continue to support people who have absolutely no interest in supporting liberty? They make that very clear. And why do we have people that we hire who refuse to complete job applications? I'm talking about politicians who will not fill out your vetting forms. I mean, I know so many Tea Party groups. I know so many grassroots groups, so many organizations. You have the Abigail Adams Project. You have local Tea Parties, grassroots groups that are filling out these, are creating these vetting forms. And the politicians, the candidates, refuse to fill them out. For me, I think that's a job application. That's exactly what it is. We're trying to find out whether this applicant for employment is qualified. And so I want to know why we keep hiring people who refuse to even fill out job applications. I mean, that it seems ludicrous to me. And then we wonder why we get so disappointed, disenchanted by these people that we elect who do not live up to our expectations. Number one, we don't even know what to expect from them. They've never told us who we are. They've never even promised to live up to our expectations. And we simply elect them because of party preference or some lesser of two evils perception. I mean, the whole thing is absolutely crazy. And so we're going to talk about vetting forms today. I'm going to share a vetting form with you that I helped create for the Southwest Florida Citizens Alliance. And I think they go by just simply the Florida Citizens Alliance. And so I helped create this vetting form. It's a very easy, simple vetting form. It's not even very specific about things. But we have politicians who refused to actually complete it. Oh, my lawyers have advised me not to do this. Really? So I want you to try that on your next job application. Go show up at the job that you want to, the place you want to be hired, and they ask you to fill out a job application. You say, "Oh, no, I'm sorry. My lawyers have advised me that I shouldn't fill out this form." Really? Okay, thanks. Have a nice day. Next candidate. Yeah, so we have so much to change about what we're going to do. And what really got me on this whole idea about vetting and actually looking into our candidates? In Florida, where I live, we have an attorney general. Her name is Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi is, likely the worst attorney general that I have ever experienced in my time in the state of Florida. She is a tyrant. She is narcissistic, and she is completely unqualified for her job. She doesn't even know what her job description actually is. And so now what has got me on this whole vetting thing is this. There is going to be a debate because we have actually, in the state of Florida, we have 3 candidates for Attorney General this year. We have the incumbent, Attorney General Pam Bondi, Democrat George Sheldon, and a libertarian by the name of Bill Wolsifer. Now, Pam Bondi has previously refused to have any debates whatsoever with the libertarian candidate. Now, she's agreed. I've heard, I've not seen for sure, but I've heard she's agreed to debate the Democrat, but she won't have anything to do with debating the libertarian candidate. Now, they're all attorneys, okay? Regardless of their political affiliation, they're all attorneys. And so now, apparently, Pam Bondi, I'm sure under political pressure, has agreed to do one debate. And it's going to be aired today at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on 2 stations in Orlando and Tampa. So you have Bay News 9 in Tampa and News 13 in Orlando. Those are 2 cities, and if you're not familiar with Florida, those are 2 cities in the central part of Florida. Now, Bay News 9 doesn't leave the Tampa area, and News 13 does not leave the Orlando area. So these debates will not be seen by anyone except for the people in the Tampa and Orlando areas. Now, this is a debate for the Attorney General of the entire state. But guess what? Pam Bondi has said outside media outlets are not allowed to attend or even monitor the debate. So there'll be nobody else reporting this except for Bay News 9 and News 13 from Orlando. How crazy is that? You have an office that affects the entire state and a debate, the only one that will be held prior to the election, and only 2 news agencies in the entire state with very limited areas will be allowed to monitor, allowed to attend, allowed to report on this debate. The people of the state of Florida should be outraged about this. This is total political gamesmanship. This is showing you that Pam Bondi, the incumbent, knows she's not qualified. And she doesn't want anyone else to know she's not qualified. So she doesn't even want to see, and she doesn't want anybody to have the possibility of seeing how pathetic she's going to look in a debate. I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking too harshly about Pam Bondi. I'm sorry. It's just, I have no respect for the woman. None whatsoever. I mean, she used to be Fox's favorite. I don't know if she's on there anymore. I'm just convinced it's because she has blonde hair and she's a female. It's the only reason she got on Fox. She was your token female, quote, conservative. But she is not a conservative. She has no idea who the Attorney General is. She thinks the Attorney General is the chief prosecutor of the state of Florida. See, she was a prosecutor in the state of Florida, and she has never left behind that job description. She does not understand that the Attorney General of the state is supposed to be the representative, the legal representative of the people of that state, not the chief prosecutor. She has totally forgotten that. And in her perceived role as chief prosecutor, Pam Bondi has taken it upon herself to try to turn the law enforcement in the state of Florida into the NSA. She has filed lawsuits that have tried to allow our local law enforcement here in Florida to have the same surveillance rights as the NSA. Meaning, she wants our Florida law enforcement to be able to seize your electronic equipment, your cell phone, your iPad, your tablet, and look at all the information on those electronic devices without any warrant. I'm serious. I'm not kidding. She has filed briefs in the Supreme Court of Florida that she feels justifies the law enforcement of the state of Florida to circumvent every right to privacy of the people. That is not the billing of a conservative. I'm sorry to tell you, that is not a conservative. Pam Bondi is not a conservative. She is not a friend to liberty. She is someone who believes that government force should be applied on the people and consequences be as they may. She has not only tried to circumvent our appropriate right to privacy in our persons, houses, papers, and effects, but she has also filed briefs with the Supreme Court of the United States to allow law enforcement to assume anyone carrying a firearm is a criminal, guilty until proven innocent in the eyes of our conservative Republican Attorney General named Pam Bondi. Now, I don't know how you feel about the Second Amendment, and I don't know what Pam Bondi says about herself about the Second Amendment, and I don't care what anybody else says about her about the Second Amendment. Any Attorney General that would file a brief that claims that law enforcement should be able to assume that you're a criminal simply because you're carrying, and that you then have to prove your innocence by showing your papers, is not the kind of Attorney General that we need. Not an Attorney General that will support the Constitution. Not an Attorney General who will support your right to keep and bear arms. This is a tyrant. And I believe this whole thing about her refusing to be in a debate other than the one debate that will be covered only by 2 media outlets that nobody else in the state will see just simply proves she knows she's not qualified, that she is a tyrant, and that she is unfit for office. She can't even substantiate by herself her existence there. Time, Florida, to get rid of Pam Bondi.
The Krissane Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist. Krissane Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist.
So, this whole debate thing with Pam Bondi and Democrat George Sheldon and Libertarian Bill Wolsifer has today at 7 p.m. Eastern Time has really gotten me thinking about a vetting form that I helped the Florida Citizens Alliance create. And I'm thinking that it's something that we need to do on a real, live, all the time basis. You know, we the people need to start vetting our candidates. And I don't want you to wait for your grassroots organizations to do that. I don't think that you should wait for, your whatever organization to do that. I think we as individuals should be picking up these vetting forms and sending them in ourselves. And if they get 400, 500 of the same vetting forms, then maybe they'll understand that filling out the job application for their job is essential to getting their job. I mean, what do you think? Don't you think it's about time we start proving these people qualified? Why are we so shocked when they get in there and they can't do their jobs because we don't even determine whether they're qualified or not? We allow them to stand up and give us a good speech, and then we hire them not based on who they are or their qualifications. We hire them based on their party affiliation and the fact that, hey, guess what? if I don't vote for this guy, the other guy wins. Well, you know what? That's how it usually works. But guess what? Sometimes the other guy winning is no different than your guy winning. And that's what we're seeing now. And the sad situation is this. We have created a situation where two parties rule everything. It's not supposed to be that way. But because we have been manipulated into a corner where there's only a two-party system, we believe that we have to vote for the lesser of two evils. We only have two choices. And with only two choices, that means we don't vote people based on their qualifications. We vote people based on, you know what, I don't want the other guy. And we wonder why we end up with people who are absolutely unqualified, who totally disappoint us, who don't do the job they're supposed to do. In order to get qualified people in government, we're the ones that are going to have to change our practices. We're the ones that are going to have to say, look, I'm sorry I can't hire you. You're not qualified. And we have created a system because of this whole two-party system where I'm sorry, but voting doesn't even matter anymore beyond the primary. The only time you vote in all reality is in the primary. It's the only time you actually have a choice. I don't even know why we vote in general elections anymore with just two choices, and they're both exactly the same. We need to be pushing people more into primary voting, into educated primary voting, and not just simply pulling a lever. So I think the solution to that is to get people on board and start sending out job applications in the form of questionnaires, vetting forms. And so I helped the Florida Citizens Alliance create a vetting form, and we're going to go over that vetting form today because I want you to be able to vet your candidates. I want this country to start making real decisions based on qualifications and not just simply on parties. So, this questionnaire says, please share your understanding of the U.S. Constitution. And I think that's probably the most important qualification for any politician today. And I mean your school board, your county commission, your city council, your sheriff, your state legislators, all need to be able to share their understandings of the U.S. Constitution because it's the U.S. Constitution that preserves our union. It is the U.S. Constitution that keeps the federal government in its proper place. And it's our local governments, state, county, city, sheriff, that are the ones who maintain the integrity of the Constitution by maintaining the federal government in its proper, limited, and defined role. So when we come back after the break, we are going to go into this form and learn how to identify constitutionally qualified candidates.
The Krissane Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist. The Krissane Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist.
So today we're going to be going over a questionnaire, a vetting survey that we can be handing out to our candidates to find out if they're absolutely and actually qualified to do the job that they want to do. And so the questionnaire that I helped the Florida Citizens Alliance create, now I wasn't the only one who did this. There are questions on here that I don't cover, like economic theory and that sort of thing. I don't do that. But I'm going to go over the form with you with the questions that I helped create so that we can understand and identify constitutionally qualified candidates, not just in the federal government, but in your local and state. And so question number 1 is, does the federal government have the right or the authority to take away your individual rights? Yes or no, and explain. Now, the appropriate answer is obviously no. Individual rights are not gifts of government, so they cannot be taken by government. Individual rights are inherent by the nature of our creation. Now, I'm not quite sure why that would be a difficult question to answer, but again, many of them say, my attorneys tell me not to answer that question. So this is important, because if your local government, I want you to see this, if your city council does not understand that the federal government does not have the right or the authority to take away your individual rights, then your city council will allow your police chief to help the federal government do that, or your county commission, or your sheriff. Your state government will not stand in defense of your individual rights because they believe that the federal government has the right or the authority to take them away, based on probably national security. I'm sure that's the answer that they will give, if they give it. Really, nobody's going to answer yes, are they? So why wouldn't they answer the question at all? Question number 2, where do our individual rights come from? Well, now the answer is practically answered in question 1. They are endowed upon us by our Creator and reconfirmed by the sacrifices of men and women to secure them. Our individual rights are ours inherently. But the War for Independence in 1776, the War of 1812, and the individual military personnel who have sacrificed their rights so that we could have them. That's the security of our rights, even though our individual rights come by the nature of our creation. Again, not a difficult question. Not quite sure why nobody would want to answer that. Question number 3. What is the role of government in the lives of free citizens? Well, the Constitution declares in the preamble that the role of government is to preserve the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. That's the role of government in the lives of free citizens. The primary purpose of government is to preserve the blessings of liberty. Not national security, not health care, not prosperity, liberty. All of these questions, first 5 questions, are all about what is the proper perspective for government. And then question number 4 is awesome. I love this question. It's one of my favorites because this ties in not only to the proper perspective of the feds, but proper perspective of the states. What is the constitutional role of the state legislator? Now, I'm not sure if our state legislators even understand that they have a constitutional role anymore. After the ratification of the 17th Amendment, where our state legislators lost half of their job description and just simply run around and making laws justifying their existence. And I don't think they understand, as the legislators of the state of Virginia in 1799 understood, that their primary role was to support and defend the sovereignty of the states, which would then support and defend the Constitution of the United States. But don't you think that it's about time that we had state legislators? Really, we elected people who understood their role. I do. I think the whole reason we have problems in our states is because our state legislators have no idea their role. The legislators of the state of Utah asked me to come and teach about the constitutional role of state legislator. I put together a presentation. And now I've been teaching that presentation that I taught to the legislators all over the country. It's the constitutional role of state and local legislators. And yes, your local legislators have a constitutional role. And so question number 4 is, what is the constitutional role of the state legislator? To preserve the sovereignty of the states, to maintain the federal government within its constitutional boundaries, and to deny the federal government any theft of state power. All to preserve the liberty of the people. Do you know what's crazy? The legislators of the state of Virginia said in 1799 that if the states do not do this, if the states do not preserve the sovereignty of the states, maintain the federal government within its constitutional boundaries, and deny the federal government any theft of state power, they said that they will create for themselves an impotent and irrelevant state government. You see, if your state governments are not protecting the state sovereignty and the liberty of the people, then there's no use of having them. They don't even need to exist. But they have an obligation to do that for the people. How many of your state legislators understand that their primary job description is to preserve the sovereignty of the states? The sovereignty of the states is the only way to maintain the integrity of the Constitution, the only way to maintain the federal government within its boundaries, the only way to preserve liberty. And it's about time we had state legislators that understood that. Question number 5. This one may be a little tricky. What was the legal compact between the 13 independent states that created the federal government? Well, that should be a no-brainer. That's like a soft pitch question. The answer is the Constitution of the United States. Question number 6. Does the Supremacy Clause in Article 6 of the Constitution give the federal government and the Supreme Court the ultimate power to determine the constitutionality of any law passed by Congress? The answer to that question is no. The Supremacy Clause states that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and only federal laws that are made in pursuance to the Constitution are supreme. Any law that does not comply with the constitutional limitations is not supreme and is void and of no force. James Madison said that. Thomas Jefferson said that. And even Alexander Hamilton said that in Federalist Papers 78. I mean, if you've got big government guy Alexander Hamilton saying that no law contrary to the Constitution can be valid, how much clearer do you have to get for that? The next question is, do the states have the authority to limit the federal government to its constitutional boundaries? Why or why not? Now, the correct answer is, they not only have the authority, they have the duty, because they are the creators of the federal government through the creation of the Constitution. The states are the delegators of the power to the federal government. And as the governmental entity that is the creator of the federal government, they have a duty to the people who entrusted them with that authority to maintain the federal government within its boundaries. To not maintain the federal government in its created and prescribed limitations is a dereliction of duty by the states. The state of Florida, I know by personal experience, is in a lot of trouble when it comes to answering this question. Because our legislators, both the House and the Senate, being conservative constitutional Republicans, the majority, the super majority of them, do not understand the correct answer to this question. And they believe that the states do not have the authority to limit the federal government to its constitutional boundaries simply because the federal government says so. The Supreme Court has said they don't have that authority, and then they misinterpret the Supremacy Clause to mean that any law created by Congress is supreme over the states. You see, you only have to have a 6th grade reading level to understand the Supremacy Clause. But apparently, most of our legislators are not smarter than a 6th grader. The next question we have in our vetting survey: Would you support a congressional law that defines the General Welfare Clause based on the original intent of our founders? Yes or no? Well, the correct answer is yes. It is the only way to keep the federal government truly limited within its boundaries. The current expansion of the General Welfare Clause allows the federal government to extend powers to anything they spend money on, and works to expand the commerce and necessary and proper clauses to create power they do not have. If you want to know the proper application of the General Welfare Clause as our framers intended, then you can read an article that I've written called Brother, Can You Spare a Dime? And in that, I give the explanation that James Madison gave in 1792 about why they created the General Welfare Clause, how it was supposed to be interpreted, and its purpose to limit the federal government. Now, I don't see where any of these questions would be particularly tricky or difficult for a constitutionally conservative Republican to keep. All of these are very conservative, especially financially conservative issues, with very financially conservative answers. So it still is rather stunning to me why a constitutional conservative Republican would not want to answer this survey. Can you tell me why? I don't know why. Their attorneys tell them they can't do it. But if they can't do it, then they can't be qualified. Come back after the break. We'll finish the survey.
The Krissane Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist. Krissane Hall Show. She's Liberty's lobbyist.
Welcome back to the final segment of our Krissane Hall Show. Remember, you can find me at KrissaneHall.com. KrissaneHall.com. You can find my newest book, my book that will help our state, local legislators understand their constitutional role, and I would ask you very urgently to make sure that your school board, your county commission, your city council all have a copy of this book, Sovereign Duty. You can find it at sovereignduty.com. It's a very, very important book. Very important. I'm not just saying that because I wrote it. I didn't really write it as much as I compiled the framers' intentions into one book. And so I'm really, really hoping that we can get this spread out. We need to adopt a legislator, school board, city council, county commission, sheriff, state legislators, adopt one and send them a book, and then make sure they read it. But we're going over a survey now to determine whether our employees are qualified. This is their job application. We've been going over these questions and the answers. The next question is, why does the Bill of Rights include the 9th and 10th Amendments? Explain each and why they are both part of the Constitution. The answer. The 9th Amendment is the assertion of our existence as a republic. It reminds the government and the people that all the rights and power belong to the people, whether those rights are written down or not. The 10th Amendment is the reminder to the people that the power to the federal government is only delegated, and it is delegated in a limited form. We didn't delegate rights, we only delegated power, and that power rests and remains with the states and ultimately with the people. To understand this, you need to compare the 10th Amendment with the 9th Amendment and the last paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, which gives you the proper definition of a state. Or you can read my book, Sovereign Duty, and you'll know the answers to all of these questions. The next question, you will like this, I'm sure. What does well-regulated phrase mean in the Second Amendment? Well-regulated does not mean governed by the government. Well-regulated means well-trained. It means to perform an act or function in the same manner repetitively without deviation. It does not mean to govern. Militia, as the framers said at time and time again, are the whole body of the people. Noah Webster, Richard Henry Lee, Patrick Henry, to name a few, made the distinction that the militia was the whole body of the people, not including the government. The next question, an extension on the last, what does shall not be infringed mean? Very simply, just bust out your dictionary. You'll find out it means absolutely forbidden to violate. You can't get much clearer than that. And I love this question. This is great. In your opinion. Now, this shouldn't be difficult for them to answer, right? Because we're asking for their opinion, which means there's no right or wrong answer. So, in your opinion, what are two current examples of the most egregious federal overreach to constitutional powers? And what is your proposed remedy to each? It's an opinion question. It can't be that difficult. The next question. What formal training have you had to study the U.S. Constitution? Now, this is sort of a trick question because I don't trust formal training in the Constitution. Law school was built on lies and federal supremacy. Constitutional training must be based in the teachings of the founders and the framers. If somebody says, I went to law school, then you need to ask them more questions. The last question we're going to address in this survey, and the survey goes on and asks 23 questions. But we are going to finish today with question number 15. Many believe the U.S. Constitution is a living, breathing document. What is your view and why? If your candidate answers that it's a living, breathing document, he has just simply proven to you he is not qualified. And it's time to find another candidate. I'm going to put this survey together this week and publish it on my website so that we can start sending out job applications for our candidates. Let's get them educated for a change. God bless. See you tomorrow.